They were 2 years into the series in 1937, and he met Grace Bradley, and they got married within 3 weeks of their having met. And he was in the middle of making this picture, and they got married in Los Angeles and had to drive back to Lone Pine, and they stayed in a cabin that Harry Sherman, the producer of the Hopalong Cassidy pictures, bought and owned for a time, so that when William Boyd would come to Lone Pine, they could stay in what's called the Hoppy cabin.
So you're Bill Cassidy?
Yep.
Came just in the nick of time, didn't you, Mr. Cassidy? Cassidy, that's all I've been hearing ever since I joined the Bar 20.
It's all right, son. No thanks needed. Maybe someday you can back up my play.
I'll be looking for that chance.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to help us even more, join our Patreon posse, and you'll get these shows ad-free. All the great entertainment we offer with no commercials, plus some other goodies too. But right now, let's get on with the show. Somebody who has been involved in the Lone Pine Film Festival and knows a lot about the location, but besides that, he knows a lot about B Westerns, and he's been a collector for a long time. And I had some 16mm Little Rascals films, and Dick bought those from me, and he still got them. Later, Dick became an associate of Hal Roach Sr. in his later years and was able to do a lot of wonderful things with Mr. Roach. We're going to ask him about that. Dick Bann, could you come and join us up here?
I did know Hal Roach. I was lucky enough to spend $4 million restoring and preserving the Hal Roach Library.
Let me ask you about your first experience in Lone Pine.
The first Lone Pine Film Festival, we had as a guest Roy Rogers. And he came up to Movie Road and Ruiz Hill up in the Alabama hills, and they dedicated a bronze plaque. And he said, the first film that I made was Under Western Stars in Lone Pine. We shot here for 9 days. It was the most important film of my life. So friends of mine who went to that festival told me, and I didn't go to it, twisted my arm, Mark Heller and Ed Hulse, and said, you have to come to this. So I thought I'd go one time just to see where they made all these fantastic films. As soon as I got there, I looked up at the Inyo Mountains to the east and the Sierra Nevada snow-capped mountains to the west, and I thought, I'm never going to miss this again, and I haven't. Hopalong Cassidy made 66 feature films, and approximately half of them were shot in Lone Pine, including the first picture called Hopalong Cassidy, and here's the one-sheet poster for it. Spectacular one-sheet poster, and half of these pictures were made in Lone Pine. And I think William Boyd and Hopalong Cassidy and the Lone Ranger are the two Western figures that are most closely associated with Lone Pine. They did the Republic serial there in 1938, made a lot of the best episodes in the TV series there as well.
And William Boyd, didn't he spend his honeymoon up there with Grace?
Yes, they were 2 years into the series in 1937, and he met Grace Bradley, and they got married within 3 weeks of their having met. And he was in the middle of making this picture, and they got married in Los Angeles and had to drive back to Lone Pine, and they stayed in a cabin that Harry Sherman, the producer of the Hopalong Cassidy pictures, bought and owned for a time, so that when William Boyd would come to Lone Pine, they could stay in what's called the Hoppy cabin. What I really wanted to see was the Bar 20 Ranch, and it took 20 years to find it because no one there knew where it was. I would ask questions, and they told me it was at the Anchor Ranch. And when I would ask, well, why doesn't what I see in this first film match up with what I see now at the Anchor Ranch? And they said, well, some of the buildings were replaced, they were torn down. And it wasn't until 5 years ago that we found out that there was another ranch there called the Lubkin Ranch.
Uncle Bann! Bill Cassidy! How are you, boys? Why, you old horn toad, I thought you never was going to get here.
The Lubkin Ranch, which served as the original Bar 20 Ranch, it's still a working cattle ranch, 759 acres.
Drop that gun and put up your hands.
Better put up that pop gun, miss. It might go off.
How dare you stampede our cattle?
I'm just shooing them back where they belong.
I was 12 years old in 1937, and we made 4 movies, 2 of them in 1937 and 2 of them in 1938.
You're toting a convict the warden was glad to get rid of.
Convict? I better get my gun.
Don't bother, Sonny. Here, you can hold this. Yeah, babe, ready!
I was cast in those movies because Mulford sold his book rights and sold the movie rights to Pop Sherman, who wanted to make 4 of these movies that Mulford had written. And of the 4 movies, there was a character, if you want to call it that, for a child who was a horseman that Mulford made a hero 4 times, and that kid rescued Hopalong Cassidy's Bar 20 ranch 4 times. And I was that kid, and it was a pleasure. Sherman called me to Hollywood, and his director was Leslie Sealander, who was the director of all 4 of these movies. Sealander took me in a room and asked me to read a script. And I read about, a half a page, I guess. And Les says, okay, that's fine. So we walked back into the office where Sherman was there, and Sealander sort of went like this, which was a thumb up. And Sherman said, okay, you have a contract. I'll give you a contract for a year. I'll pay you by the week. And we want you to show up in Lone Pine and film a movie.
Why ain't you to school today, Boots?
I was going, but I got too worried about Hoppy.
I had never met William Boyd until we were in Lone Pine, and William Boyd was in the Hopalong Cassidy outfit. So, frankly, I don't know Bill Boyd, but I sure know Hopalong Cassidy. So when I met Hopalong Cassidy, who was my hero, that became very obvious to Les Sealander, and Les took me aside and said, Billy, you understand the story that we're doing, and the screenwriters have written text that you should use if you like it. But if you don't like it, change it, because we want you to interact with the characters that are in here as if they were real. Well, Sealander just turned me loose. I wasn't acting, I was me.
Hi, riding my way?
Mind if I do?
It's a free range, you can ride any place you want.
I really did think Boyd was my hero. Oh my goodness, I saw every Hopalong Cassidy movie that came to Delano, and I was one of the many kids that sat in the front row with a cap pistol on my side, shooting everybody that there was. And we thought Bill Boyd was the greatest thing that ever happened.
In the 30s, it seemed that a lot of the B Westerns, I know some of the John Waynes were shot up there
Right.
that he was doing for Lone Star, that the crews would go up there because they didn't have the sound stages that the majors did. And of course, the majors were not making B Westerns at
Right.
that time either. And so the independents were able to get these wonderful vistas and formations, and it added so much to the production value.
The first person who discovered Lone Pine from the Hollywood community was a director who worked his way up through Senate, Goldwyn, and Paramount, a man named Clarence Badger, directed all the important silent Clara Bow pictures. And he discovered Lone Pine as a vacation retreat and a resort area for hunting and fishing in the teens. And this was right at the dawn of Hollywood, and pretty soon he was talking to his colleagues who were visiting there with him. And in 1919, finally, he decided to film a production called The Roundup with Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. And it was not a comedy, it was a dramatic picture. And shortly thereafter, other production companies followed for the reason Rob says, that especially if you were a low-budget production entity, Poverty Row, you could, just for the cost of what was then inexpensive gasoline, drive to Lone Pine and get spectacular production value that would allow you to make your humble B picture look like something that was made at the A Studios. And 3 years after they started filming there, they built a hotel called the AWOW. That hotel is still there today, and it's used in some of the films. The big attraction for me is the time travel aspect. And when you go to Lone Pine, you can stay at the AWOW Hotel. When you drive into Lone Pine, you are having essentially the same experience that the filmmakers did, the movie crew, the stars, all the talent, when they went there to make these pictures. And you look out and everything is exactly the same. Nothing has changed because the whole area is governed by the Bureau of Land Management, so it can't be developed. So you look at this photograph, you look out there, it's exactly the same except the actors are gone.
Dick, thank you for this insight, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob.
I came out in we were part of, in the East Coast, we were part of World Vision and Spelling, which was World Vision's largest syndicator of television programming in the world, 12,000 hours of programming, and of course, Aaron Spelling's business. And Blockbuster bought us in March of '93, brought all the Spelling enterprises, and in October of '93 bought Republic Pictures. And I learned that through meetings that I would come out, and I was going to be the president and CEO of Republic Pictures. I don't have a film background. I'm a business guy and marketing guy. And so I was very excited to come out. The business had been owned by Russell Goldsmith, who I think you knew from City National Bank, for many years. You could have bought Republic in 1975 or 6 for $4 million. Nobody wanted it. Russell bought it. So we came out here, and a lot of transition, as you have with any company. I was here about a few weeks, and I got a call from Rob Word. Who's Rob Word? I don't know. And he, introduced himself and started talking about, did I know all this history of Republic, which I did not. I wasn't even sure at that point, although I grew up certainly going to Be Western, that Roy was still alive. And so as I worked through the business side, Rob started introducing me then to his posse of friends and said, you've got to come to the Golden Boot Award. Republic had never participated in the Golden Boot Award.
I just needed some money. It's a fundraiser. We were looking for sponsors.
And I was that sucker. And so the first time I didn't know much about it, so I made some calls, and I actually had to beg people to take the table to come with me. And we had the greatest time of our lives. And it was just an incredible experience for me to see at that point Roy and Gene and Bob Hope and Pat Buttram the first year. Clayton Moore. I mean, it just went on. And I grew up in Ohio, so this was like a pinch me situation for me. And so that, but Rob, his gracious introduction to many, many people. And then as I got into Republic and started meeting this heritage and got to go spend time with Roy and Dale and all those that we've mentioned, Monty Hale here, Gene. My kid said to me at one point, my son is here today, my kid said to me at one point, Dad, what happened? You went from suits to boots.